What's going on, workforce? Brian and Chris here today. You haven't seen our faces in a little bit. Chris just got back from vacation, and today we're also celebrating our 5-year anniversary here on YouTube. So thank you guys. Chris, how was your vacation? We're going to be talking about Cash App. This is probably going to get heated. We've got some numbers to back it up. Let's start off with some positive thinking. How you been?
I had a great time off. I'm in the new office. Got plans for this void behind me. But yeah, I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be in game. Spent a good portion of the day trying to catch up on all the news with everything that's going wrong in the world in the 2 weeks I was gone. And so people are upset from Blizzard, which is where I left it. So it's actually more of the same, to Final Fantasy, where I came back and I was like, it kind of felt like the Fat Black Chocobo thing all over again, where it's like, okay, you have a great game that wants to offer more support to a happy community, building toward a great expansion at a time when no other game is having more success. I added all 5 of these great things together, and I got a mess. Like, why is it a mess? Like all I can picture is Joey from Friends going like, meat, good. Jam, good. Like, what's not to like?
What's not to like? Hey, how you doing?
What's not to like? You don't have to keep eating that, Joey, but I like it.
All right. So, first and foremost, thanks for everybody who hung out with me while I took over the stream. Chris is back on stream Monday through Friday, 8 to 2 p.m. And then we kind of film our videos Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if you guys want to tune in live. So I got chat up. I'm checking out chat. So if you guys make any good points, there we go. But what we're talking about today, obviously, if you guys have been following any of the YouTubes and the scenes and all that good stuff, that Final Fantasy XIV released the Cruise Chaser mount into the cash shop for $30. And I've seen so many, just like what have I just said, I've seen so many like points of threads of debate on this regards. And in the majority, I would say, majority of people are indifferent. In fact, actually, I'm going to go and bring this on screen. I ran a poll over on Ginger Prime. I ran a separate poll, similar though, on Work to Game, because I wanted 2 different comparison numbers for this. So let's go ahead. I'll share the results of this poll. It's been up for a little while now in this regards. Focusing on the indifferent player, as long as they're not paying for power or paying to win, 75% of people with cash shops, I guess you'd summarize that as Then essentially cash shops eventually ruin games. No cash shop. These are bad for especially subscription-based games, falling at 16%, and cash shops giving away to support the game falling in at 8%. Chris, is any of these numbers surprising to you on the surface?
No. 70 to 90% in every survey just don't care. And I bet that number's larger than 75, because I bet there's some that didn't even care to vote. Like I literally don't care. Like, if it doesn't impact me, it's none of my business. And then from there, you've got people who are actively against supporting anything. Just in all cases, they're just convinced that money is the root of all evil. And I think that in many cases, what it turns out is that good people given a lot of money get a chance to be good people, and that bad people, the difference is when somebody looks good and we give them a lot of money and they turn out bad, we're like, what? And then it later comes out, it's like, that guy was a jerk the whole time. He just didn't have the ability to be a jerk at such scale.
Yeah. Now, I juxtaposed this with a different poll asking the question kind of differently with more options, kind of focusing in on whether it's balanced, it's a sub-based game, shouldn't have a cash shop, gives me a way to support the game, and I don't like cash shops. They don't impact my play in 14 and other, essentially, and we got a wide range of comments. What this tells me is that 8% has so much buying power that the 16% doesn't matter. And I don't mean to insult anybody in that 16% cash shops eventually ruin games. I'm just looking at this mathematically in terms of just the volume, because even if you converted 75% of the base that's indifferent, and you got to do so with something egregious, right? You got to have some major action that takes you from like, it's just a game I'm doing here, whatever, to all of a sudden, like, this is something I have to take a stand on. Like, that's an event, which hopefully will never happen, because that's not a good event. We're seeing that happen over on the Blizzard WoW side, I think, in that regards. And then essentially, you're also then competing against people who are like, your objection to it is you're still being outspent. And at the end of the day, I think the fact is that I'm not surprised that the majority of people are indifferent, but I did see tons of comments from people going, wow, this poll actually shows me a lot. I'm no MTX, I'm no cash shop in games, but I now see how they are existing. They were, like you're clearly, being outspent in terms of your objection to the fact that people are happily, with the Cruise Chaser mount and happy to purchase it and support the game. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, I think it comes down to it's a luxury item in a luxury product. Like a game is already something that you're paying for out of luxury. You don't need this to play on a console or a PC, which is a luxury item. Maybe you have one for work, but it doesn't have to be the power to run games. To play with a reliable internet connection, which in some parts of the world feels like a luxury. I don't think it should be to the degree that it is. And so to say that that group of people has some free cash available is likely true. And to say that, when somebody who makes plenty of money and sits around and says, I don't want to pay for merchandise for my favorite sporting team, or I don't want to pay for pay-per-view events because I don't follow sports, I play games. It feels ridiculous to me that they'd be like, well, we don't want to prey upon people, so no t-shirts, no plushes, no in-game mounts, no collector's editions. And then they just let like the Etsy's of the world and like, just go off and take all of this revenue. It feels ridiculous to me that they won't just take my money. I play Games Workshop games for games like Warhammer, right?
Yeah.
So I play with these little guys, and they're expensive. But when I'm not acquiring more guys, sometimes I wouldn't mind something like a cool dice bag or a cool t-shirt or something like that. It's a really cool gift to give like my brothers who I share this hobby with, and we have a great time. And it's ridiculous to me that up until like 2 years ago, they never sold t-shirts. Like that's insane. You have people who spend hundreds of dollars a year supporting your game, and you don't have something available for $20 that's not related to the game. Like that's crazy. So I think it makes sense that you would say, hey, our core audience is people with disposable income by its very nature.
Yeah.
We should have something that costs disposable income. The question is, how do you do that without devaluing, right? If I show up to a Warhammer event and I don't have a Warhammer official t-shirt on, does it damage my gameplay at all?
Right.
No.
Like, where do you draw the line? Like, is this something that's acceptable in that regards? I would say absolutely. In fact, I'm hoping that I can get the second one. I really do enjoy the lore. I get value out of that. The thing that I would say is different about that book that I showed versus other games in that regards, from what I hear, is that I can understand what's going on with the story of Final Fantasy XIV without needing this. Like, this is not required reading material if I want to step into Endwalker.
Yes.
And thank God for that, right? Like, it's like at some point you're like, what's going on here? What do you think?
Depends on how it's supported, right? And so if it's like, once again, Warhammer, where you have an entire black library and the narrative is told through 67 novels in a way it could never be told in game because it's thousands and thousands and thousands of pages, there's something nice about that depth. If it's instead just simply hidden from you, like Destiny, and you need My Name is Bife to parse it at all, that's a problem. And so if they're like, hey, we're releasing our own official My Name is Bife videos and they're behind a paywall, oh yeah, screw you. Like that's ridiculous. And so I think the line is somewhere in there. I do think predatory marketing is really frustrating. And then I like digital goods. My wife and I live in a house that's like a little over 1,300 square feet. I don't need a whole lot of stuff. And so unless the stuff provides a value, like I play a game with this, they sell like collectible versions of these that are like bigger and like sit on my desk. I don't own any of those because they don't serve a function.
Yeah.
And so like I can't just keep bringing things into my house because it's not that big of a place. But like I can buy a collector's edition of Endwalker and I can get a cool freaking mount with it. And like, that's a thing that I can enjoy that takes up no space. So I like that there's upgraded kind of cost mounts. I do think the way they're marketed, they need to be very careful with. I play cash-based games on my phone, and so those are predatory in their very nature. But like I know that going in, and so you want to feel like it's fair to the space, right? If you and I go out to a club with our wives to go, maybe you and I go dancing. You and I both enjoy dancing.
We do.
Go out, we have a great time.
We're really good dancers.
And there's two people over hammered in the corner, puking in a trash can, and there's two more people over here making out, whatever. and there's some guy in the parking lot that asks if you want to buy drugs. Like,
what kind of clubs are we going to, man?
that is something that happens, right?
Yeah.
In dancing establishments, those are all three events that, like, if you and I saw them in a night, we could make it through a whole night and not see any of those things. It'd be totally normal. We could also make it through a night and see one or more of those things, and it wouldn't be like, that's totally insane. But if instead you invite me to, like, your kid's birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, and literally any of those things happen, it's immediately unacceptable. So, like, context is everything. So I do think they need to be very careful that they've presented this game as a subscription-based game that is going to sell every other year an expansion, that has a bulk of content, continued content, and that outside of that, there will be cosmetic-only items sold through the shop.
Yeah.
And so that's the value proposition, that we decided to create our characters in this big, beautiful, luscious garden, and we're maintaining our characters in this garden. And as long as it stays that way, it's fine. And people are like, well, what if New World's pay to win? As long as it's that way from the launch, I don't care. What I don't want is
stepping into
expansions of New World being like Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
And then it transitions to a BDO model. That's BS.
Right. Well, you going in and stepping in and having that understanding clear and straightforward. That way, you know what you're getting into, and you're not, being kind of like sidelined and sideswiped, because that's where a lot of the drama comes in. I think with the drama in how we see this and how this event kind of unfolded and what we saw over on Reddit, like the comments essentially reflected what the poll percentage perspective. A lot of people were like, well, why are people even mad? It doesn't break the game, so the majority of that indifference, like, I love the game, why are we even talking about this? I think twofold, kind of the core root of this specific issue was the data mining. The mount was data mined and had people who follow that got excited. Cruise Chaser also happens to be a very iconic boss in 14, where when you go look at the other mounts that are there, you got a big old floating, Moogle balloon. You got, things that are just like silly, and what?
Whale.
Yeah, you got a whale. There's a literal whale. There's the lunar whale. Like, there's two whales now, and that's so.
It does become frustrating if there's a lunar whale boss in Endwalker.
Ooh, yeah. Does it? Yeah, I would say perhaps. But thankfully there's not like a, I guess a Fenrir bike boss. There's a Fenrir boss, but it's not.
What if the whale's riding a bike?
A whale on a bike, and they're just like, now they're just trolling back. Now they're just mad, like, oh man, I think we pissed off the devs. Now they're just saying like, what? All right, game on. But I think you have that expectation that the boss would be acquirable in game. Now the counter argument we've seen heavily is that only that they're like, what, they want to put this awesome out, only that a handful of people would ever be able to get behind some achievement or something like that. And I actually do agree with the content. I wish there was some kind of form of content that was playable for especially any kind of boss that's a mount. But they've already set precedents for it. Like, if you want to get the Twin Tanya mount, that's through a campaign of inviting people to play the game, where I've seen people not even invite people. They just made additional accounts for themselves, spent however much money, and got the Twin Tanya mount. I didn't do that. I invited my friends in, and I was able to get the twin mount within, like, I think with a month. Like, I was able to like pull that, because I was like, hey, come play. And and so I think that's essentially one part of it. The other part of it is that I think, just like I've seen chat kind of sounding off, like when you look at the Reddits and the Twitter in that regards, I think you have a majority of people who don't know that they're actually not a majority, but they're a minority when it comes to cash shops. And they have this kind of like hard line in the sand, and rightfully so. There's a fear-based method in which that we've seen other companies have and abuse that trust. And I think any kind of relationship when it comes to money within a video game has to be built off of trust. And that's why it's interesting to me that Yoshi P's doesn't actually run the shop. There's a different department that I don't think, I think they've put some kind of level of separation between the two. He
sees it all before it goes out.
He sees it, but it's at the end of the day, like, there is like this weird kind of like a line that this is something that's going on, and it does directly fund and support this game. So you have like the majority of the player base that's either indifferent or happy to support, and then you have a vocal minority that essentially just, it doesn't matter what I think they put in the cash shop, everything should be in there, but that's just not what's going to happen, and go ahead.
Right. And the expectation around this mount in particular, the reason that it was able to get any traction with people being frustrated is because of what mount it is.
Yeah.
Right. And so the fact that this mount was not tied to a new triple triad challenge or a new blue mage challenge or a new ultimate challenge or something like that, it's the content of this mount that did make it particularly sting. But but like the core principles are the same. I'm totally fine with monetization in game as long as the monetization is either optional or presented up front. Even if it's not optional, I don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like I pay a subscription happily each and every month. It does not bother me. But it was presented to me that way. When you invited me to join you in Final Fantasy, I knew I was joining a subscription-based MMO with every other year expansions, and I knew that had an expense. And so like I knew that when I picked it up. I play Warhammer. It's incredibly expensive to get into. But I knew that when I picked it up. I was not baited in by here's your free Warhammer models. Oh, wait, we're going to take those away if you don't start spending serious money. Like, there are things in these games that do feel a little predatory. There are aspects of the housing system that unintentionally feel predatory just by the way they affect people with an intention of trying to make the best of a bad situation. I don't think they go out to be predatory, but they can feel that way.
Yeah.
And so there are aspects of this game that feel that way. And the cash shop, when you look at like Fantasia's costing money and people feeling like, oh my gosh, my friends are all glamoring, I should glamour, or we're going to add a new race to the game. Oh, they're just added male Vieira to sell Fantasias. No, I don't think they woke up and were like, how can we sell Fantasias? Let's develop a whole new character model just so we can sell. Like, no, I don't think that was the goal, but it is a side effect. Mm-hmm. And I think the problem here is that they latched onto a really cool boss. And as a result, people want that model, and that model is not tied to something like achieving top level PvP or achieving something insane with like, what if it was you beat, the Epic of Alexander with Blue Mage to get that mount.
Right.
8 blue, and it has to be 8 blue mages, and they're only allowed in. They don't get the drops, but instead they get this mount. We would see this epic grind for world first right now on trying to beat this thing with freaking blue mages.
Yeah.
And so I think because of the content itself is where the frustration was drawn. Mm-hmm. I do think the frustration was exacerbated by the data mining.
Yeah.
Because if it had come out and it was a cash shop, and it was a cash shop from the first moment you heard about it, you're like, oh, that sucks. And you move on. The maddest you can get is how fast is your 0 to 60 anger meter. So you've got no time to get mad because you immediately had all the information from day one. But if instead you go, oh my God, they're releasing this mount. Oh my gosh, I want it. I'm going to get it. I bet it's behind this. No, I bet it's behind this. And then we're all excited. Dude, do you want to take off work? We're going to farm it next week. And like you get all of this excitement built up. And then it comes out and it's like, not only is it a mount, we made it a multi-seater, which makes it $30. So now it's an expensive mount. You're like, dude, what the heck? And so like by that point, you've let your expectations so far outpace reality that when reality drops, the gap isn't here where it's like, there's some things about this that I don't like. The gap is way out there.
Yeah.
And so there's a ton of frustration.
And if you also didn't take off work for this, like, I guess, in your mind event, you would have had the money to probably purchase it. Get back off work and be like, today sucked. Let me just go ahead and have that mount. Now, I think I talked about this a little bit on the Crystal Core radio podcast while you were out. And one of the things that I kind of say is that my issue kind of with cash shops as like a just natural kind of side of it is the instant gratification, swipe credit card and get reward. And it ultimately isn't as like fleeting. I think when we talk about like, are these kind of mounts flex or not? And generally I would say the community says no, like these aren't flex mounts. There are ways of supporting the game. My joke is like, if they attach, like we'll get the Oceanic data center up sooner, like, hey, if you guys want Oceanic in November, buy this mount. Like they'd sell out, like they'd actually run out of generating key codes. Like there's enough of this player support who would happily help and be a part of that. Like I help fund EU, I help fund Oceanic, I help, like the community is there for the game because the devs have built the trust and they've developed a quality product and a great game and community that it makes sense that you kind of have that connection. But that all being said is like, that's not necessarily, we know that it's supporting the game, but we don't have any say in how that money gets funneled towards what we ultimately want in that regard. So I just would love to see like mounts in that regards or certain things actually be tied to content. And I know this gets to be like, we could nitpick like what actually makes sense, but it'd be kind of cool in my opinion is to see like you get, instead of having that mount just show up in your inbox, you have a little quest that you do to unlock said mount so that it ends up being like, okay, yeah, like, yes, it is like a cash DLC. Mount. Yeah. Just like a little bit of DLC. And now you have this quest that you can do whenever. And then no matter what, like just saying that, like all of a sudden, like how difficult should the quest be? What should that be, etc. Like all that would be.
Now, if I want to see the quest, I have to pay.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, there's obviously like things that would have to be like figured out, but if nothing else, it's not like swipe credit card, get whatever. It's like, hey, okay, I'm supporting the game. And then I get this extra little bit of DLC, and then I can kind of do this quest so that I actually have more connection to the mount itself, as opposed to like, hey, I just swiped my credit card. And that was done. And that's obviously just one man's opinion. I'm not saying that anybody here has to agree with it, but just my thoughts.
I really liked the way the Lunar Whale was rolled out. It was rolled out very upfront. It's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
It's there to support FanFest. And then because we know these amounts go on sale eventually, they released it at the sale price. And so it didn't feel like, oh, if I want to support FanFest during FanFest, I'm actually paying more than if I just wait for the sale price. It's like, no, we're going to release it at its rock bottom price. So it came out at that price. And so I think, releasing this mount with the lore book, and if you purchase the lore book, this mount's included for only, $20 extra, and you can buy it for just $20 for the first 60 days after the lore book releases for pre-orders. It's like, okay, cool. So I can just buy this for $20, and then it'll spike to 30, and it'll just stay there. Just like all the seasonal event mounts come back and they sit up there, and the seasonal event stuff sits up there and it's purchasable, and it sits up there, and occasionally it gets discounted. And so I think you're right. I think there is something where it's like, if it's tied to something like, hey, we hit 25 million players, and in order to honor 25 million players, we're coming out with a new Magitech color. Yeah. The new Magitech color is going to be blue, and at 30 million, we're going to come out with another one. It's going to be green. And so, like, I think tying it to it would make it feel a little less like you should have made this available in game. I will say it is nice that it came out around the same time as they introduced the polar bear mount into game, because that does at least kind of soften the blow of like, great, between now and Endwalker, you have time to implement one mount, and you made it cost money. No. The same week we gave you a mount, you get to ride a polar bear around because you did a beach event that involves a polar bear. And if that lore confuses you, I encourage you to go do the quest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, do you have any final thoughts before you take us out?
No, I enjoyed my polar bear. It's actually the same model as the old Christmas bear. So if you missed the Christmas bear from before and you want a bear mount, and you don't want a tank, this is a great chance to go get yourself a bear mount. So nice to have another cute, what do they call them they call them fluffy balls. So nice to have a white fluffy ball to ride. And it's good to be back in 14. It's good to be playing. I took 2 weeks off of basically all the games I spend most of my time playing. So I really played Minecraft and a little bit of Rocket League and Octopath Traveler. Had a ton of Octopath Traveler played. It gets hard as you unlock more characters.
Yeah, it does.
Like, I am just getting my butt beat. Like, I was like, this game's so easy. I'm going to finish this. No, I am not.
You got to grind.
I got to grind. So I was finding myself grinding, like, come on, trigger the encounter. I'm here to grind. So I'm having a good time in that. And I'm excited to be back. Thank you guys so much for 5 years. We'll be celebrating all week.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Sound off in the comments. What is your flex mount? I'm very curious as to what is the mount that you flex the most hard on in the comments of this video. For Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks for watching. We will see you next time. But until then,
take care.